I want you to think off the top of your head, when was the last Donkey Kong game? Not a game that Donkey Kong happened to be in, but an actual legitimate Donkey Kong game. When was that? It was probably like a couple years ago, right? Maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4? No, 10 years ago was the last Donkey Kong game. That was specifically Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. That was released a little over 10 years ago in February of 2014. And this was a very well-received game, both commercially and critically. But since then, we have not gotten a Donkey Kong game. That means that we have gone through actually a couple different generations now of Nintendo consoles that have not seen a Donkey Kong game, which is very sad because I feel like Donkey Kong is like the most underrated Nintendo character ever. He might be my favorite, but he just like gets no games these days. All of the main ones are really good, really well received. Donkey Kong Country as a series is just very good. Donkey Kong 64, while a bit controversial because of all of the collecting, was still a very good game, a very massive game back in the day, and I'm honestly surprised they haven't ported that to the Switch as well. And even like the weird off-brand Donkey Kong games like Donkey Kong Jungle Beat in 2004 for the GameCube. You know, it came with like the set of bongos. I know you've seen that. I know you were cruising through Best Buy one day and you saw that set of bongos. Yeah, even just weird games like that. I just overall love Donkey Kong as a character, and I love the Donkey Kong game. So I can't believe that it's been 10 years since we've gotten one. And I know a lot of people are wondering that same thing, which is why I was happy when I saw that it was big news today where we got a sort of insight on a canceled Donkey Kong 3D game that we were supposed to get for the Nintendo Switch, because obviously, even though we haven't gotten a game in 10 years now, I knew that something had to have been in the pipeline at some point that just got canceled. So today it was actually revealed that it was none other than Vicarious Visions that was going to be the developer of this 3D Donkey Kong game that was supposed to come to the Nintendo Switch. Vicarious Visions is actually now called Blizzard Albany, but they are owned by Activision. Now this game was codenamed Donkey Kong Freedom, and I know you're already thinking of like Donkey Kong wearing, I don't know, an American flag tie or something, but I think the codename actually stemmed from the fact that this would not only be a 3D game, but from what I'm seeing, more of an open world type game. In the articles I read, they were actually comparing traversing around vines from trees, similar to the Tony Hawk games, which, funny enough, were also developed by Activision. So apparently this goes back to Skylanders Superchargers. That's kind of where the origins of this Vicarious Visions developed Donkey Kong 3D game comes from. Now, I'm not super familiar with Skylanders games, but Superchargers was released in 2015. It's one of those toy-to-life games where you get like a real-life action figure or something that can plug in or connect with a game, and so I guess eventually they had Donkey Kong and I think a few other Nintendo characters brought to this game, which, by the way, I should have said is made by Vicarious Visions. And I guess from what it seems like, Nintendo was impressed with the way they handled Nintendo characters being in this game, so much so that Nintendo offered a deal, or at least the groundwork of a deal, for Vicarious Visions to develop this new 3D Donkey Kong game. And I'm seeing it even got attention from Shigeru Miyamoto, who was all in on this project. But unfortunately, Vicarious Visions, they would go on to develop other projects, mainly Call of Duty and the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy, which came out in 2017. Now, the Nintendo Switch actually came out in 2017, so if Vicarious left this Donkey Kong project behind to end up working on what would become the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy, that actually tells me that this Donkey Kong game began development actually before the release of the Nintendo Switch. So I'm thinking this might have even began development around the time they released or just finished releasing Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze in 2014. Yeah, it is sad to think that we could have gotten a really cool follow-up to this awesome Donkey Kong Country game that wouldn't be a Donkey Kong Country game at all. Rather, it would be a callback to the Donkey Kong 64 style of gameplay. And also, Vicarious did a great job on the Crash Bandicoot trilogy. The graphics look great, the gameplay's solid. So, I don't know, that makes it even more painful to me. Kind of just thinking of what could have been. I'm really thinking, since they've gone through like 2 generations now of consoles without a Donkey Kong game, they have got to have something planned for the next console. I am almost 100% sure that we've got to get something on release date, some sort of Donkey Kong game for the Nintendo Switch 2. And if we get that, that will be totally awesome, but unfortunately, we now know the Donkey Kong project from Vicarious Visions that we did not end up getting.